Hey Otters, welcome to this very extended special version of my tutorial. What am I saying? Hey Otters, welcome to this extended version of my takeouts tutorial, wherein I teach you not only how to do takeouts, but also a variation of it that's pretty subtle, but can be used to create some really cool aesthetic looks that I actually prefer. So stay tuned to the end and we'll cover that slight tweak of a variation. But until then, let's learn how to do takeouts. It looks like this. For a lot of jugglers, this is the first trick you'll encounter that has that dragging orbit move, which becomes essential for learning a lot of other tricks in the future. So takeouts is a really important trick to learn. It's not too hard. We're gonna break it down step by step and hopefully you'll pick it up pretty quickly. Before we do that, I do want to take a second and thank everyone who is a member of my Otter Club on Patreon. I really appreciate it. It's because of your support that I'm able to make this tutorial as well as all my other ones free for the public. So I really appreciate it. So what is happening in takeouts? Takeouts is essentially a 4-2-3 variation where you're swiping the ball and dragging it out and over the top of the pattern. You're taking it out. Takeouts is also really similar to Burke's Barrage, and a lot of people confuse it for that trick. It is not the same as Burke's Barrage, the difference being that takeouts drags the ball over the top, whereas Burke's Barrage drags the ball through the middle. I'm making a tutorial on Burke's Barrage. If that's done, there will be a link in the description. If not, I haven't posted it yet, but it's coming soon. Before we start on the exercises, there are a couple tricks that you already need to know how to do in order to start learning takeouts. These are them. You should know the 4-2-3 pattern, as well as the variation of the 4-2-3 where you throw the ball over the top. It's very important you know that over the top variation. It is essentially the core of takeouts, so you have to have that one down solid. If you don't, I have a tutorial on it. Go check that out and then come back. I've been teaching juggling a while and I tend to come across two distinct learning styles. One is a very step-by-step approach, which is how I personally learn best. So that learning style would involve learning one throw, second throw, third throw, and then continuing on in that fashion. The second learning style I come across is finding a trick that's similar and then morphing into the new pattern. That would be like picking a trick and then eventually turning it into the trick that we want. I personally don't tend to like that second learning style, but I do think that for the sake of this trick for takeouts, it can actually be the better way to learn it. But I'm going to cover it both ways. First, I'm going to cover that step-by-step throwing way, and then after that, I'll cover how to morph into it from the 4-2-3 pattern. I highly recommend you watch all of it and try the exercises step by step, even if you don't think that that's how you learn, because there are some helpful exercises in there. But if you find that that step-by-step learning style is really confusing and it's not working for this trick, stick with me. I am going to cover how to morph into it from the 4-2-3 pattern, and I think that that might help it click if you're feeling frustrated. So make sure you watch the whole tutorial. So let's start with 2 balls. This is a really simple exercise, but it's going to get us started on understanding the orbiting motion that is the essential heart of takeouts. We're going to start by doing a little tiny toss across our body, just a normal cascade throw. Doesn't matter which side you start with, we're doing it on both sides. So we're going to do a little throw, then we're going to do an outside throw with the hand that's about to catch. Just like that. So we've got a little toss and then an outside toss. This time when you're catching that first throw, I want you to actually swipe the ball across your body. Right after you throw that outside throw, you are swiping the ball across your body and slightly downwards. 1, 2. 1, 2. Then from here, we're gonna drag the ball up and around in that orbiting motion and come back to where we started. So up, like that. Now do it on the other side. We're gonna start with the hand that just did the orbit, it's gonna start the throw. One, two. 1, 2. I cannot stress enough how important this exercise is. This is the core of the trick. If you can get this into your muscle memory, adding that third ball is not going to be nearly as hard. Do this so you can feel pretty good about it. Once you do, pick up a third ball. All right, now that we have 3 balls, we're going to start with that same exercise. The third ball is not coming into play yet. We're going to go 1, 2, and come around. But this time as we're coming around and we're uncrossing our hands, we're going to throw a third ball straight up. So it will go 1, 2, 3. And I want you to get in the habit of catching that third ball in the hand that just threw it. You don't want to catch it in the other hand. It's going to mess you up later. So we got 1, 2, 3. Then we can switch, put the ball in the other hand. 1, 2, 3, switch, 1, 2, 3. From here, we're just gonna combine them. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, but this time, instead of catching this ball, we're gonna throw that outside throw that we're used to. And as we catch that ball coming down, we're gonna swipe it. So that 3 actually becomes the 1 on the other side. Takeouts is a 2-beat trick, so it's actually 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2. One, two, 1, 2. Every time you say 2, it should be that outside throw. 1, 2, 1, 2. It's also worth noting that the ball that's doing that outside throw is the same ball every time, just like in our 4-2-3 variation. This is essentially the same thing as takeouts. It's a 4-2-3 variation. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then from there, we'll repeat. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. The thing that might be happening to you that I most commonly see happen with beginners is you'll do the 1, 2, 1, and you'll try to bring that orbit around too fast to throw and catch the ball that is in the air. This ball that's in the air is going to be caught by the other hand. The orbit is a slow orbit. It's not super fast. So you want to avoid 1, 2, which is what people try to do. That's not that fast. It's slower. It's a right, right, left, left trick. It's a 4-2-3. So it's right, right, left, left. So it's right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. It's probably gonna be something that your brain is trying to do to come around and catch that ball with the other hand because your other hand threw it, so your brain thinks that the hand that didn't throw is supposed to catch. It's not. It's still the same hand that threw. From there, continue the pattern on. 1, 2, 1, 2. Again, note that every time I say 2, it's that ball coming across the top, and it's the same ball every time. It's the pink ball in this case. The other 2 balls are doing the takeouts. It might also help you to remember that it's a 2-beat pattern, so that takeout is essentially happening over 2 throws. It's gonna be an inside throw and an outside throw. We have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If you make it a 1-beat pattern, it ends up being reverse chops, which is a different trick entirely. So it's a slow 2-beat pattern. It is a 4-2-3. All right, so if you're feeling super overwhelmed by that and the step-by-step way is not working for you, I totally get it. This trick in particular is hard to break down step-by-step because of that dragging motion. So let's try to approach it a different way. Keep in mind all the things you just learned, especially with that 2-ball exercise. It's still gonna feel like that, but now let's try starting with that 4-2-3 pattern where the 3 is going over the top, the sort of rainbow looking one. So we've got 1 ball going over the top and 2 balls in the middle, right? Right now we're just catching those 2 balls normally. We're just doing a normal catch. But what we can do is do that swiping motion that we practiced earlier. So take your 4-2-3, but instead of catching those inside balls, swipe them, okay? So swipe. Now from here, we're gonna come out and around, but it should still feel like that 4-2-3. So you can start with the 4-2-3, swipe. You can always go back to it if you need to. Swipe, back, swipe, back, and then eventually you do it every time and you've got takeouts. hopefully one of those learning methods will help you in getting this trick. I still think it's just really important to break it down, practice the 2-ball exercise first, and then figure out which of those 2 methods works better for you. There aren't honestly a ton of mistakes or issues that I know of that people come across when learning this trick, other than they just can't figure out how to do the trick. And all I can say about that is to remember that it's a 4-2-3. So it's gonna go right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. If you end up having to catch right, left, you're doing it wrong. So really try to feel it and remember that it feels like a 4-2-3, because it is. It's right, right, left, left. And always resort back to that. Especially if you find yourself trying to come around and catch that ball, that means you're trying to do a right, left. It's a pretty slow trick. That drag happens while you're doing 2 throws with the other hand, and then it switches. Right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. Those are all the tips that I have on learning takeouts. I really hope that this helped you. I'm curious to know which learning method worked best for you. Leave a comment and let me know, because it's great feedback for me and it will help me teaching others going forward. So let me know if the step-by-step method worked better or the morphing method worked better. I'm really curious. Hey Otters, welcome to the extended part of this tutorial where I'm gonna teach you just a really subtle variation on takeouts. It's not gonna be the most exciting variation that you've ever seen, but I think it's really nice to learn variations, especially if they're subtle, because it teaches you more control. So that's what we're gonna do this time. It's a version of takeouts that's basically the same thing, but just involves a different throw and allows you to mix it up if you want to. So let's start with it. So normally in takeouts, we do an inside and then an outside throw, right? It's that over the top 4-2-3 variation. But we can also do takeouts with our normal 4-2-3 variation, where each of the throws is an inside throw. Inside, 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 instead of inside, outside. What that looks like is this, as opposed to this. Now, regardless of which one you like more, it's fun to be able to do both. You can start by doing the regular 4-2-3, and just like before, we're gonna swipe the 4 and then come across and out. Easy as that. If that doesn't make any sense to you, let's do it step by step. So we can break it down with 2. Before, we started with a crossing throw and an outside throw, and then we swiped that crossing throw and did a fun inside to outside motion. Very similar for this exercise, but instead of that outside throw, it's gonna be a normal fountain throw or an inside straight up throw. So it'll go 1, 2. We're still gonna catch that ball and swipe it across and out in our takeout fashion. 1, 2. And then we can alternate. So note, it looks a little different than the other exercise, which was, now it's inside. You can already see that this creates like a slightly different aesthetic and also kind of feels cool and more natural in some ways. Once you feel good with 2 balls, pick up a third. All right, from here, we're gonna do that same start. 1, 2, 3, then we're gonna throw the 3rd ball. You already know takeouts, so from here it pretty much feels like takeouts, but the difference being that the 2 is not an outside throw, it's gonna be an under throw. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Again, it's pretty subtle. It doesn't look super different from Brooks Barrage, but I find that it feels different, and sometimes it's fun to explore tricks like that. Plus, it's gonna make you a better juggler if you can take one throw and shift it just a little bit. On top of that, you can play around with some fun aesthetics with it. You can sort of intentionally amplify the look of those balls and make it really side to side. And all we're doing is making our 4-2-3 really accentuated like this. Of course, you can also do that with the regular takeouts. But when you accentuate them like that and make them more side to side, you really start to see the difference between the 2 variations. Fun fact, this variation is actually what I did for a long time and thought was takeouts. it's not. I was doing it incorrectly for like 10 years. But I actually really like this version, and I think it's fun to know how to do it. So hopefully you found it fun too. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to leave them in the comments or reach out to me on Patreon, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for being members of my Otter Club. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Takeouts is also really similar to Burke's Barrage, but it is not the same. Both of those learning methods are totally valid.